Hello, everybody. It's Felicia Day, and this is Felicitations, my podcast. Y'all, it's podcast number 61, which is not a number of any note whatsoever. So, hey, whatever. I was going to call it 60, and then I actually did the homework to look up how many podcasts I've done, and 60 was already up. And I've already famously done this a couple times where I just lost count, but it really is a testament to A, how little I prepare for these, B, that I don't have a producer, and C, that I don't make money on this, so I'm not going to care about A or B ever. Anyway, welcome. I have a guest, and we rarely have guests, but I couldn't resist the temptation to put a very amazing, spectacular author on this podcast. I don't know why I don't do guests, except I do have to do preparation, C, A, and B, and C. So anyway, my amazing guest is Leigh Bardugo. Hi, Leigh.
Hello. Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I am too, and I'm glad that we are on video. So I'm going to put this video up on my YouTube channel. Why not? But you look gorgeous. Like your hair looks like someone did it. The background is like so real, simple, chic. And like I'm just like in a microphone in a I don't know, some kind of weird booth.
Some of us have to work a little harder, Felicia. You're a natural, glowing beauty. I am 45 and I need all of the ring lights I can assemble.
Okay, first of all, your face is how do you what? Okay, so this podcast is going to be about Leigh Bardugo's skin regimen because
this is my dream. I've been waiting so long for someone to ask me.
This when you're promoting a book, by the way, she does have a book coming out pretty soon, and we'll talk about that later. But I should probably get the name of it. It's over here. It's called The Rule of Wolves. It's right behind your head. Yeah.
It is, and I have a copy here.
It's really beautiful. Your cover art, I notice, is like top notch. Top notch.
I have been very lucky. Well, I was very lucky. We're gonna get deep quickly here. Yeah, I used to be with an imprint called Imprint at Macmillan Children's, and unfortunately, they were one of the casualties of the pandemic. But the art director there, Natalie Souza, is just one of the most talented women I've ever met, and she's responsible for all of my book covers from The Language of Thorns on. So she's
amazing.
Truly extraordinary. And after she did Language of Thorns, she had come up with this idea for it to look like this embroidered thing. And I was like, maybe, I don't know. And then she pulled it off so beautifully that every time after, when she would come to me with a crazy idea, I'd be like, if it was anybody else, I'd be like, nope.
But you have to trust them. Yeah. I mean, I think the reason I even started reading your books was because of Six of Crows. I thought that was the most beautiful cover I've ever seen. It was so dynamic and gothic, but cool and fantasy, and not, it wasn't like there's a lady on the cover. You're a lady, you're gonna like that. You know what I'm saying?
I had to fight the lady on the cover.
Really?
Believe it or not. Yeah. So those covers were all the first 5 Grishaverse were Rich Deas, D-E-A-S. It always reminds me of that. You're too young for this, but there was this LA DJ, Rick Dees. Yeah.
Oh,
anyway.
Rick Dees. Wait, Rick Dees. Listen, I'm only like 3 or 4 years younger than you. Also, we got to get back to the skincare regime, okay? So,
okay.
A and B. But, okay, so Rick Dees weekly top 40, right?
Yes. Not him. He's not my book designer.
I was like, he's multi-talented.
He's a Renaissance man. So as you may know, maybe not, maybe it's different when you are a famous lady, but as a debut author, I had absolutely no control over my cover.
No, I've heard that a lot. I heard that a lot. I had a little bit of control over, but my cover was me, so it's a little different. Like, I can't imagine if I did a novel, like, would I be putting my foot down for less lady, more lady?
I mean, it's very rare when you're starting out to have approval in a contract. What you have is consultation, meaningful consultation.
I'm from Hollywood. That means nothing.
It means absolutely nothing. It means they think it's great. Hope you do too.
Yeah.
I was lucky because so my publisher originally, I loved the cover that he did for the advanced reader copies. Then they decided to do something different because Barnes & Noble didn't like those covers. And then they arrived at this different cover that was a lady kind of bursting out of a sunbeam.
What?
And it was like 2 doves away from a Christian romance novel. Like, it was And I was so horrified. It felt so wrong to me because I was like, people are going to expect something very different when they pick up this book than what the book actually is. And then they're going to be mad. And also I just didn't like the cover.
Yeah, of course.
And I was lucky because my publisher was very kind and listened to me, and we went back to the drawing board, and we ended up with the original Shadow and Bone cover, which I absolutely loved. So, and I think my book destiny would have been very different if I'd had that other cover.
Well, for sure, because it put you, you know, and we're going to talk about this in one of the questions that one of our wonderful viewers asked via Twitter about gentrification and especially YA lit and all of that. Is the same publisher this the one with Ninth House, which, by the way, I was obsessed with last year or the year before, whenever it came out. I loved it.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about gender in Ninth House. Same big publishing umbrella, but a different imprint. It was Flatiron because that's where I publish my, I don't like saying adult books because it sounds like porn, which is fine. If you like porn, buy my books. Whatever. Whoever needs, the book is there for you. But they're really just novels for adults as opposed to my YA.
Yeah. And it's just universally great. Okay, so your books, you're a wonderful author. You have so many books. Let's talk about skincare.
Okay. When I say I've been like, whenever I like read magazines and they're like 5 things in your bag, I have waited my whole life for somebody to ask me like what the 5 things in my bag are.
I'm going to ask you, even though I'm not known for, I mean, look at me. I'm a hobo in a sound booth, but I am actually into, I mean, I feel like I have really good skin.
You do.
And I have a really bad top light right now, so I could have a fill. I actually wanted to record you on my better mic, so that's why I have this eerie top light, but I could look way better in the other room, just FYI.
We know you're beautiful. It's okay. You are a stunning angel flower.
Okay.
I have terrible skin, actually. I have rosacea and super sensitive skin. And I have my whole life. Like, and I had acne as a teenager and the whole bit. And honestly, I get very angry when I see a lot of skincare promoted because it will inflame so many skin conditions that people don't know about.
Yep.
And I feel like there's all these young people who are like, their desperation is being preyed on, and it makes me furious. I have a great dermatologist, Dr. Harry Saperstein, here in Los Angeles. I used to go to his mom, Dr. Rose Saperstein.
I'm going to this person. I need a new one because I will admit to you, I went to somebody about 6 months ago, and I went to go get Botox just between my eyes. And my dad is a plastic surgeon. So the only plastic surgery I've ever had, and I don't care, get plastic surgery, just get good stuff. My dad's a plastic surgeon. He does it between my eyes because I squint when I'm on the computer. So I couldn't go to COVID because I couldn't go to my dad's house. So I went to this dermatologist. I had to go back to him twice, and he still didn't do it right. I'm like, bitch, this is basic. This is the most basic Botox ever. My dad does it holding a whiskey on the couch when I go visit him.
You're like, there are Groupons for this. This is not advanced medicine.
So I'm like, I have one.
I have a Botox rec for you. Fantastic. Amazing.
Thank you so much.
And but I have to remember what his name is. Oh, I do remember. It's Dr. Kevorkian, but don't be freaked out. No. It's a very common Armenian name, and I feel for all the people who have it, but he's a delight. And yes, he's great. But my skin guy, I used to go to his mom, Rose Saperstein, who I actually named a character after in one of my short stories because I love her so much. She, you know, when you're a teenagers are horrible. Adults are horrible. People are horrible.
They are.
And she was the person who understood what was wrong with my skin and stopped putting on these things on me that were just inflaming these existing conditions that I have.
And having bad skin is, I have to tell you, I've had only like probably 10 pieces of acne on my face ever. So I will tell you, I am in the privilege.
Well, we're done.
I know. Am I dead to you? I'm so sorry. But I feel like my dad has always told me less is more, right? When you put like C serum and you put all these like peels and retinols, you're just damaging your skin, right? Just leave it alone. Do a little bit. Keep it moist. That's all you need, man.
Keep it moist. Keep
it moist, kids.
Just gently damp is what you want. You want to be damp all the time. There was an article just recently about how some women are realizing that all natural skincare, there are plenty of things that are all natural that are bad for you.
Yes.
Like hemlock, not great for you. You know, many things you should not put on your skin. And that I am just a big proponent of science. And I know that like some people want everything to be all natural and all organic. That's fine. But my skin reacts so badly to even like a vitamin C, whatever, forget it. Like it will just inflame instantly.
Also, why do we want to peel things off our? It's very delicate over there. Why peel?
It's very delicate.
It's very delicate.
This lady, I remember this skincare lady. She was on like the Today Show or something. She was like, take a washcloth, your roughest washcloth, and dial soap, and just go to. And I was like,
what?
How dare you?
How dare you? Oh, how dare you? Well, also, I'm very jaded because I recently went to Sephora. Because I had $100 gift card burning in my purse. So my dad knows me really well. I put it in my stocking. And I was like, okay, finally I feel comfortable to just go into Sephora at 10 a.m. on a Monday and do a little shopping. Because online shopping for skincare, I need to see it. But then you see the sort of mass groupthink of how they're getting A, there's too much product out there, and B, everything is cherry this year. And it's like, cherries just didn't come out of people's butts. All right. You guys got together, decided cherries were the thing to sell everybody, and everything's damn cherry flavored now. And so I'm like, am I just old that I've seen all the cycles go? Or it's just like, you know what? Here's my face and this is all good.
I mean, that's what I call crone power. Like when you've been around for a while and you've seen the shit and you've been in the shit, like you're not as vulnerable to those things. You're not as susceptible to those things. And it does make me a little bit nuts. Although I will say so I'll disclose something personal. I was supposed to get married in March of last year. We're still engaged. We just couldn't have our wedding.
It's fine. Whatever happens is good.
But for the first time since I was a miserable teenager, I went to go get facials, and I went to a place called Joanna Vargas, and I have to say, I was thrilled with the results. And I almost was sorry to be thrilled because it was not cheap.
No. I went to Kate Somerville, which is like the popular place in LA. I have never come out with bumps all over my face in my life. So you go to the best place and you pay like $200 for some crap to be slathered on you continuously. And you want to come out looking amazing. That one, I mean, I have people who swear by that place. It just depends on your skin, right?
Yes. I was very clear that there were certain things they could not put on my face, and they just went with it. And they had this little thing that like sort of zaps you. I'm one of those people who's like, does it hurt? It probably works.
Yeah.
So, you know, they kind of zap you. And
do they do the shavy thing? Have you ever done the shavy thing? Because I've never done that, where they're like literally like using a blade to shave the top
because
off.
That terrifies me. Yeah. Like, I don't want, again, gently. A little zap is okay. Little electricity. It's science. Good for you.
Yeah.
Anything that involves an acid, forget it. Retinol, no. None of that.
Nope.
None of that.
I love this because I have like a dark spot that just came up. It's a freckle that's turned into maybe a crone mark, and I should be just proud of my crone mark, but I'm like, get this thing off me. So I'm like, laze it off. Do something.
There's a balance. There's a balance. And I fully embrace, like, if you want to get Botox, if you want to do a laser peel, whatever you want to do that will make you feel comfortable in our garbage culture that goes out of its way to make women feel uncomfortable, please do whatever it takes. You know?
Here's the thing, because I've grown up with plastic surgery, right? And I should, I got told early in my career, get a nose job, get your teeth fixed, and I probably should have gotten my jaw fixed, because now I'm having jaw problems because I have such a bad lisp. I have to move it forward, and then when I'm sleeping, I grind it because I'm on SSRI. So like, there's a whole thing that's going on. Anyway, the point is that what did I say? I don't even know.
Plastic surgery. They wanted you to get a nose job.
Oh, for sure. I was told several times to get a nose job. But then I looked at a picture of Kendall Jenner the other day, and like, what that girl has done to her face. She was such a cute, fresh-faced little like 16-year-old, and then like she's got lips out to here. And I'm like, well, I think the difference between being a crone who is like, you know what? I don't care. Here's the thing. Okay, I turned 40 last year, right? So, and there's a tipping point at which men don't think you're hot anymore. So you're free to just think you're hot. Do you know what I'm saying? It's
glorious.
Like, goodbye.
You become invisible. It's like a superpower.
Yeah,
it's incredible. Yeah.
And maybe business-wise it's not great, but as a person, I feel so more liberated. So I feel like whatever I get done is going to be for myself. But then a 20-year-old is going to be like, I swear, I was at the Grove yesterday, and this girl, God bless her, she was beautiful. And I looked at her from the side, and I'm not kidding, duck lips, they stuck out 2 inches. I was like, girl, you can't even eat sushi with that. I was really concerned for her.
I think for me, you know, I'm fine with people doing whatever they want to do, but I do worry, in part because, and I'm sure if your dad is a plastic surgeon, you know this.
Yeah.
Things move around. Like you get old, and nobody knows how this stuff is going to settle when you get older. Like,
nope.
And more, it's like I think about how vulnerable I was at that age, and you know, if you had told me I could lose 20 pounds when I was like 17 by cutting off one of my fingers, I would have been like, absolutely. Do it. Is it the thumb? That's a shame. Okay. Like and that kills me because you know, my work means I encounter so many young people and they're so vulnerable.
They're vulnerable.
And again, like all of these companies, all of these people preying on this moment in your life when all you want is to feel good in the morning and to not feel like garbage. Like it's a horrible, it makes me crazy.
It makes me really upset. But it also, I read this really interesting book called Girls and Sex about teenagers and how they think of sex. And there's this whole sort of mythology now where, and I don't know if it's complete mythology, but like I'm dressing super provocatively because I'm liberated. This is for me. But like, it's like 5 layers down. Is it really for you? Because the ultimate aesthetic is for complete, like the ultimate aesthetic is that men think that's a really attractive, right? So how are we fooling ourselves into thinking that this aesthetic is for our own sexual liberation, or are we really, I don't know. I feel
it's the whole who's zooming who thing, you know?
Yes.
Like, and when I was in college, you know, I feel like I was sort of in the first wave of this, in terms of like, it was like when we were all wearing baby tees that said like porn star on them, and it was just like, I am feminism, you know, like I'm empowered. But it was also, and this came up a lot for me when I was writing Ninth House. You know, we didn't have language to talk about what we were going through and what was happening to us, what we were seeing happen to other people. And I look back on the way we talked about each other, the way we talked about other women, and it is not comfortable. No. And our big sort of, I think like the overriding thing was like you wanted to be in on the joke, right?
Yeah.
You wanted to feel like you were on the inside of something because you sensed how dangerous and how cruel it could be. Yeah.
No, that's why I love Ninth House. It was very encapsulating and very feminist, but not like, this is my moral. This is the moral of the story. No, it was just a cool ass fantasy series. Anyway, okay. Well, I can talk. So we'll do our spin-off skincare podcast later.
I'm in.
So this podcast, we're gonna get into your books. And let's talk about your book now, actually, so people get it. So the upcoming book. So, you have this Grishaverse, which is incredible, and there's a trilogy, there's a duo, and then now this new book is the sequel to King of Scars, the first in the duology, and now the Rule of Wolves is kind of completing that duology, right?
Yes. So there's the trilogy, which is the Shadow and Bone trilogy.
Yep.
And Shadow and Bone is also the name of the new Netflix show that's coming out,
which we will talk about a little bit because I know Eric Heiser very well.
Yes, he says hello.
Oh, yay!
I was very excited about this podcast. And then there was a duology called the Six of Crows duology, which they're pulling some characters and moments from for the series. But you could read Six of Crows without ever reading the Shadow and Bone trilogy.
Which is what I did. I actually started with Six of Crows and then backed up into beep, beep, beep. Into the Shadow.
Many people do. And then this duology has characters from the first trilogy and the second duology. So this one I wouldn't recommend like just starting cold on. I think I tried my best to make it possible, but I think it would be challenging. And that's the King of Scars duology. And then Rule of Wolves ties it all up. And it's probably the last book I'm gonna write in the Grishaverse for a while. I don't know how long.
What?
6 months, a year, 12 years, I don't know.
I mean, this is interesting. I'd like to talk about that. I mean, I know everyone's wild for Grishaverse, and the fact that you've built this world that you could continuously just do books in is so admirable and so hard, really.
I mean, and I'm very lucky to keep writing in this universe because I have friends who had grand plans for series that they never got to write because people didn't buy the first book.
Yeah.
You know, and the publishers, sometimes they stick with you and sometimes they don't, you know, like it just depends what the market is like and what the climate is like and if they see a following building for the book or not. But I got very lucky and I got to keep writing in this world and building this world out. But
and you built it out in the way where you can make a TV show out of it, which is awesome. It's so rich. The characters are so interesting. I'm really thrilled to see. I'm excited to see what they pick, because when I first saw it, I thought it was a Six of Crows show, and then I was like, oh no, it's not. It's all just it's a beautiful gumbo of beautiful young people.
It is a delicious gumbo, a paella of delights. I think the way that Eric brought these stories together and the writer's room, he has an amazing team of writers. I think it's really ingenious and delightful. And I think it's going to be some sort of surprising because I think it does a very good job of staying true to what is best about the books, but gives readers something totally new and gives sort of audiences a different point of access to this whole world. And I think it would have been boring to just move sequentially. You don't know.
No, you don't. Exactly. Also, it's like, it's kind of fun to have somebody, once you've taken a step back from it, it's kind of oh, how are you going to play in my world? Because this is my world. I get it.
If you like the person, yes. If you don't like the person, you're like, get out.
Yeah, get out.
Terrible mistake and get out.
No, Eric is like the #1 fantasy. Like, I know he chased like Name of the Wind for years. He was high, like he has such a rich history in epic fantasy, and so I couldn't think of a better person to create a world like this. I'm so excited about the show.
He also walks the walk, like there's a lot of people in Hollywood who will talk about respecting the work that women do, and then they don't.
Yeah.
And I've seen it happen with YA adaptations and the adaptations of other authors, and it's almost like you can feel the contempt on the screen, and it doesn't work. Yeah. And I think, something that mattered to me very early on was that Eric really cared deeply about the books, and he also cared about the readers of the books and treating them with respect. So
yeah, if you have a real nerd, it's kind of really hard to straddle that line of like, I need to make this accessible to people who normally wouldn't read these books, but I also need to make the fans of these books happy. And so it's a really hard line. You almost have to be a geek yourself, but not so inside your navel that you're like, I'm only going to please the people who know they read every single short story and all of that. Like, because that's almost where Marvel is right now. And I'm just like, okay, I don't need to know. I don't want to watch WandaVision, look at the chirons on the commercials and be like, I know what that is. I'm like, I don't want to have to do that anymore. I'm too tired.
I'm a clone. I love WandaVision. I
know it's so good,
but I missed so many things and I even have read that particular storyline in the comics and was still like, okay.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So it's all good. Okay. So I just want to ask one thing for myself before we go into, hey, what have you consumed? And clearly you need to buy these books. And if you haven't read all of them, go ahead. But if you're into Grishaverse, go ahead and check out the new sequel to King of Scars. But I just want to know, I noticed, I don't know, about 8 years ago or something, fantasy started to take this sort of Eastern European flavor, and I think you're one of the people who really pioneered in that area. So, which I think is really super interesting and unexpected to sort of fantasy, books kind of follow a herd as far as flavor and tone and all that stuff. And so I've read a lot since, but certainly you are one of the best at it. What attracted you to that particular kind of folklore and flavor of fantasy?
I mean, I knew that I didn't want to do another sort of cod medieval Europe setting. Mm-hmm. But there were sort of two things that, for one thing, I knew I wanted my tech to be later in sort of the timeline. So the technology, the military technology is right around 1860, somewhere in there when the books start. Then they start to diverge because you bring magic in and so forth.
Yeah.
But with the actual world, I'm Russian Jewish, and I'm a variety of things, but one half of my family is Russian Jewish, and so when growing up, Russia was talked about in our home in this very peculiar way. It was truly this kind of love-hate relationship because it was this place of tremendous culture and beauty and history. And at the same time, it didn't belong to us at all. It was a place of danger and oppression that literally my ancestors fled, and had horrific stories, that had been passed down. And so that sense of sort of peril and promise was already deep in my head, and I think naturally lent itself to a fantasy world. But I've gotten a lot of shit for the way that I used Russian culture in these books and Slavic culture in these books, and that's always a little
I'm sorry, I haven't seen that type of I'm embroiled in controversy all the time. I hadn't poked into that world.
I find it a little strange. I think that there's a very worthwhile conversation around ideas of appropriation, but I also think it doesn't leave a lot of room for diaspora and people who came from that. And I'm Russian Jewish on one side and I'm Spanish Jewish on the other side. And
that has the best music, but that is a tough way to go through.
And the best food.
Yeah, but, for sure.
But our joke was always like, we've been thrown out of everywhere, which is, when you begin to ask, what am I allowed to write? And there's something that I get very angry about because it feels a little like being put in a shtetl. Like, no, you're not allowed to write this. This isn't yours to write about. Yeah. And I'm sort of like, well, then your ancestors shouldn't have kicked my relatives out of a village and, set fire to our homes. But
it's very complicated. I mean, if you look at what such great art and music is inspired by folk tales, in the 18th century lists and all. They're taking traditional folk tales and they're making them and something different. All of our art really is an evolution of what influences us. And yes, there is definitely a hard appropriation line there, but where it's a very amorphous thing where you could say this is right and this isn't. And you kind of have to look at intention and all these other things. It's more complicated than I want to talk about now because I feel like whenever I enter it, I'm like, you're stepping in shit. You're stepping in a big old dookie pile, right?
Yes, I would like to Homer my way into the shrubberies.
Yes, exactly. But then that doesn't help either.
Look, I think my experience, I've done some dumb stuff in my books, right? Like I have looked back on things and been like, oh, I should have done that differently. And in some ways, having a TV show, you're like, we can fix it. Yeah. We can make it better. Yes. We can rebuild. So I think you have to be open to criticism and open to seeing those things and greeting them without being defensive. At the same time, there are certain things that I think are discussed completely without nuance. And the idea that, that I think it becomes a point of attack as opposed to a point of discussion.
Exactly, 100%. And that is Twitter and why Chrissy Teigen, you guys drove Chrissy Teigen off of Twitter, all right?
I saw that.
I'm a little upset.
Strong and beautiful Chrissy Teigen was driven off of Twitter. So there's no hope for any of us.
No, not at all. And I think, to be honest with you, I think we're kind of ending that era of, hi, you're just in a you're in a pool where anybody could throw shit in your face. And they can also give you cotton candy, but they'll also throw shit. And so I think that whole era of social media is over. And I think as we see whatever a platform evolves nowadays, next, I think it's going to be a closed system where people are not policed in a sense, but you're just in a safer, smaller world. I mean, I have a Discord.
I hope you're right.
I love it.
Yeah. I can't imagine the kind of weird and horrible shit you must be subjected to.
And I will say that a lot of other people have gotten it worse. Yeah.
And I don't, I read a thing on Tumblr of all
That's still a thing?
I know it still exists. It was years ago, but it was one of these things that said, 5% of all fandoms tend to be toxic. And if you have a fandom that's like 100 people, 5 people may seem like a lot of people, but there's only so much noise they can make.
Yeah.
But as your fandom grows, that 5% the ratio stays the same, but 500 people or 5,000 people can make a lot more noise and make things worse for the rest of the fandom much more.
100%. That happened to me when I first got on YouTube and had this channel that was supported and put on the front page, and people know you without context and without investment. And then you're just like, oh my gosh, I am being bullied by thousands of people. And yet I shouldn't, the proportion of it is small, but if you had 1,000 people outside your house telling you they hated you and you should go jump in a fire, like That's dangerous. And so I've worked through with my therapist. It is PTSD. I've told that to anybody who's had an incident where they've been attacked on the internet. This is a serious mental health issue for yourself. And so whatever level it is that you're experiencing this, it is traumatic, and it's teaching your brain that the internet and other people are dangerous. And I think it's really not good for our country or people or anybody.
It's horrible, and I think it got a lot worse in the pandemic.
Yeah, it did.
And I try so hard to I have a very vengeful spirit. And so I
love
do.
you. Spite is my motivator in life.
I have a very vengeful spirit, but I try so hard to understand that a lot of the people who lash out, I think, at me are often young women and young girls. And I think they feel very powerless in their lives. And I think this year, some of the things that politically happened over the last 4 years made people feel even more vulnerable and powerless. And on the internet, suddenly you don't have to be the nail anymore. You can be the hammer.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I try to remind myself of that. And sometimes it works. And sometimes it doesn't work.
Well, also, I always remind myself that when I have a daughter who's 4 years old and she is so adorable and she's like, Mama, I love you more than anything. No one will love you more than anything. I was like, in 10 years, you're going to say the opposite of that. But I do, when I read things to her, I was like, oh, from an early age, women are told they need to be beautiful. And if they aren't, they're worthless because they don't have another adjective in any books. And that all older women are there to be usurped and pushed aside, or they're your enemy, and it is just like, okay, this is a basic problem that creates all of this stuff for us that we have to work through for the rest of our life. I've been
thinking about this so much because so I'm a fat woman. I'm a size 18. I've been many sizes in my life. Right now I'm an 18. And all of my body image issues got triggered by the show coming, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the prospect of doing press and, oh my God, what am I going to wear? And all everything I thought I had sort of processed and dealt with, and all of it came crashing in on me.
Wow.
And I really had to take a step back and say, are you going to let these fucked up thoughts take this moment away from you? And that's the war I think we're waging through our whole lives, is how much of my life am I going to let this fucking demon created by culture steal from me?
Yeah.
This is what I've been dreaming of and working towards for a decade of my life. Am I going to let the demon take it? Not today, Satan, this is...
Oh. And also, I think, I talk about this in my book, Embrace Your Weird, which is kind of like a quirky self-help book. And a lot of it is because I've battled anxiety a lot. I have panic attacks all the time. And I'm like, oh, that nasty voice in my head who I have completely tried to suppress because I don't want my daughter to see me look into a mirror and be like, ugh, I look really bad today. Or look at my, how do you as a child pick up on this internal sort of hateful, how do you get that voice in your head? Well,
I mean, I have very clear,
you learn it
somewhere. I have very clear memories of watching my mother. My mom, I love you, Mama. You're never going to hear this because you don't like the internet. Okay. But I watched her diet, crash diet after crash diet, and triumph and excitement and new clothes and happiness, and then the weight would come back, and I look, and the weirdest thing is I'll look back at photos of my mother and she was not.
I know.
She mentally had made herself into something, that was, that was the worst thing she could be, and I've been, so there's a successful author who referred to me behind my back for a while as the fat cripple.
Wait,
and no, not going to out her, and when I first heard that, I was like, oh, but I because you're taught as a woman, the worst thing is to be fat. And I'm like, and then I was like, it's a descriptor. And that's such a dumb insult. It's like calling me a blonde mammal. That is it's just
awful. I mean, that person had a family where they said hateful things to each other and that was okay. This is a problem. It's all this childhood stuff because a baby is never born hating themselves or anybody. And never inhibited to create and show people what they create because it's all a joy. And literally we got unlearned from birth, whatever it is. And so I'm hyper focused, but I know that you know, I'm the kind of, I have the same thing. I look in the mirror and I've never seen anybody beautiful. I'll look at a picture of myself 5 years later. I'm like, you looked great. What is your problem? So there's no objectivity in reality that I know when I look in a mirror that it's real. So then it's just like, well, who's in my head messing me up? How do I go overcome it? Or at least just push it aside. And like, that's the crone thing. I'm like, I don't even care as much. So you're not as powerful in my head, you know?
I mean, that is a beautiful feeling. And I do often think how much time and energy in my life I devoted to thinking, to fear of being the wrong size, of being, of getting older. You know, we talked about, you know, Botox and facials and all, like, how much time, energy, and heart was poured into that could have been poured into work, achievement, endeavor. And it feels like, you know, it feels like a trap. It just feels like it's like the best possible, okay, we gave you the vote, but now we're going to saddle you with anxiety and misery for the rest of your life so that you never achieve anything, but you'll leave a pretty corpse. Like, it is really quite a long con by the patriarchy.
It 100% is. And I feel completely powerless. I'm like, what can I do? And the only thing I could do is make sure my kid doesn't have those voices in her head. Like, that's literally all I can do, because I see the monumental weight of, like, yeah, I mean, literally, I cannot get the picture of Kylie Jenner before and after out of my head. And it for some reason, it really impacted me, because I'm like, she's so beautiful and is so happy. And then now she's just a picture and she's not who she was. And yet she was told that all these features were not right. And then she gets $1 billion, but is she happy? Who knows? Is she happy?
I don't know. I hope she is happy. I hope she is happy.
I'm sure she is, but she's showing a lot of other girls that the way they are isn't the way they should be. And that's what really bothers me.
Yeah, I think too, like, part of my education online has been understanding that, you know, I may be in this particular war, but there are, you know, the way that fat bodies are treated, I can still wear, you know, standard sizes. But it's not just about clothes or online trolls, like that, the way that they can't get the right medical help, you know, the kind of vicious anti-fat bias that's out there. I have to admit, I was really not clued into. And that's sort of the good side of the internet, where you're like, oh, damn, I've been given insight into somebody else's life because they had the balls to share it with me and to do it in a way that was generous and educating. Like, I love that and I respect that, but it is a hostile place out there. And
but also for me, and I'm going to move on after this, but like, for me, you obviously have, I mean, I can't imagine producing this many books. And I mean, I've never written a novel. One day I will, but I'll be like, Felicia wrote 2, maybe by the time she was dead. You've already have such an amazing body of work, right? And you obviously, and when we work, we want to be part of a peer group, right? So you're not working in a vacuum. You're like, I want to be amongst those authors. You see some authors, you're like, I just want to be friends with them or be accepted by this society, because we're all working in a society. So I want to be part of that world, and to know that somebody behind your back was calling you these names, and they were doing that, and then B, the people who heard it didn't just stand up and be like, you're a terrible, stupid person in the moment. Then you feel like, do I belong here at all? I had the same thing happen with video games through all that Gamergate stuff and like companies not wanting to work with me as much. And it's just like, oh, my identity was placed here as a part of this world. So I wasn't even accepted in the world that I thought. And you feel just embarrassed and like a fool. And so I can't imagine how much that impacted you a lot.
It did, but she's awful. So I don't like, if I had a lot of respect for her or her work, I think it would have been absolutely gutting. Yeah. Gutting. Yeah. But because I think her books suck, I was like, meh. Yeah. You know, their insult is as boring as your novels. But like, but at the same, and I was lucky too, because it was interesting, because the woman who brought it to my attention was a blogger, and she is a very beautiful young woman. I don't actually know if she's still blogging, but her, basically everybody in her family is heavy. And I think that this person thought she had found a kindred spirit. Like, we're pretty girls. Oh, no. And so And so I think in some ways it was like victimizing for the blogger who heard this, because it was reinforcing this ugliness, this cruelty that you don't want to believe. I mean, you're right, that you don't want to believe exists in a professional peer group. Especially in sort of an environment like YA, which talks a lot about feminism and progressive ideas. And then to encounter that, I think is unpleasant and shocking. Yeah.
Well, they suck. Okay. Moving on, we're going to do some questions.
Okay.
We had some really good ones. Iads Marie asks, what's the best job you ever had? And what did you learn from those experiences? And your worst, and what did you learn from those experiences?
Okay, I guess I can't say this job is my best job.
Yeah, that's good.
Because it is definitely my best job. Okay, so my worst job is easy. I was a beer girl one summer.
Wait, what?
So when I was in college, I applied for a sales and marketing internship for a company, which I don't think exists anymore. If they do, I guess I'm gonna get in trouble. They're called Wit Beer. Okay. And they were based in New York, and they were like a microbrewery who had done like the first online IPO or something weird that had put them on the map. And my job was basically to take this beer. I thought I was going to be like coming up with ad slogans and stuff. My job was to walk around New York in the peak of summer when it's like literally like walking through a swampy armpit, and go to delis and bars and try to get them to carry this beer. And the problem was the beer was terrible.
Oh no.
So you would be like, try a delicious wit beer. And they'd be like, I did, and it's gross, and I'm not gonna carry it. And then at night, my job was to sit at the bar and be like, I'll have a wit beer. And like, this is delicious.
Oh no. Oh no.
It was an awful job. And bless my friend Michelle Chihara was working at a city guide, because that's what the first boom of .com was like. Everybody was like doing city guides. And this guy had started a city guide, and she was like, well, do you want to come work at our, I was like, yes, yes. And my job there was like to read resumes and write like, summaries of events that were happening around town. And the best part was there was free lunch.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
I mean, I was so broke. I lived off of my like $4 lunch special. Like it was heaven. And I will forever be grateful to her for that and a variety of other things. But like, that was my worst job. It was awful.
And what did you learn from it? What would you say?
What did I learn?
Is there anything?
Wit beer is terrible. The thing I think I learned from, I have had many, many jobs, and in all of them, it's your job is to just put one foot in front of the other and keep going, And I was lucky because, after, a month and change of this, my friend came in and offered me something else. But that, if I hadn't stayed in New York and stuck it out, that wouldn't have happened, When I first started freelancing as a journalist, I slept on that same friend's couch. And broke up her relationship, but he sucked. So
yeah, he sucked. That was good. You did her a favor.
Her husband now is delightful. So, but like, that was what I did before I started getting paid as a freelancer, because I had to take an internship. Like, you just keep going. You go with the opportunity that comes to you. If nobody will, open a door to you, you blast one open. You just keep going and paying your bills and paying your rent and trying to find your way through. And it can be a garbage feeling. Like, I have a very clear memory of being, 30 something and thinking, this is it. I haven't built anything. I have nothing, my tombstone is going to read had potential. Like I've done nothing.
Yeah.
And at that time I hadn't even finished a first manuscript. So.
Wow. So that's interesting. I did the same thing when I was about to turn 30. I was like, you're never going to amount to anything. This is it. You're going to audition and sell cornflakes for the rest of your life. And that's what made me write the Guild. So I think that sort of existential crisis of one failed thing after another, or one mediocre thing after other, or just a bunch of unfulfilling years of trying to find yourself. Finally, it's sort of, you got to have that pressure to move, because if you're comfortable, why move, right?
And I do think
what we all want to be. Yeah.
I do think it made me much more grateful and willing to hustle in my career. Like, I think it's easy to look at so Shadow and Bone hit the New York Times bestseller list when it came up.
Amazing.
It was a one and done, like, which I thought that was it. My life was going to change. That was, you know, like James Patterson was going to call me up and be like, come over to the clubhouse, but he still has not called.
What are you doing?
I guess he's busy writing 32 novels a year.
Yeah.
But I thought everything was going to change. Nothing changed. It was a one and done. It was on the list. It was off the list. It was great. It's incredible. But that's not a career. That's a book, you know? And a first trilogy, you think, that's a career. It's not a career. It's a trilogy, you know? And so that willingness to sort of keep going, keep hustling, paying my way places, you know, I paid my way to conventions. I was on panels where there were 6 people in the room. I made my own merchandise, you know, like I sat at many tables with much more popular authors being like, have a button, have a bookmark, have a bookmark. And people stand there and they're like, oh, I haven't heard of your book. I'm sorry. And you're like, oh, don't be sorry. You know, what can I tell you? Like, nobody tells you that that's part of being an author.
No.
But that's the hustle. And I don't know if I hadn't had so many crappy jobs, if I would have been grateful enough and without ego enough to just do all of that. And, you know.
Because when you finally got to the point where you're like, I see a direction I want to actually stay in, then you had all these tools to pull from. And I think
please let me stay. Yeah.
Exactly. Don't get me back. I can do this. I can hustle. I sold this beer. It was so bad.
You don't know how bad it was. And I sold it. Not well. Not a lot of it. But yeah. And my best job, I wrote movie trailers actually for a living for a while. And that was a great job. It was a great job. It was a fantastic day job. It was sort of like writing parody for a living, but it was really, it was, of the many jobs I've had, one where I at least felt like I was good at it. And, you know.
And also probably gave you, I mean, there's nothing more brutal than writing the back of your book. And I can't imagine that skill set doesn't pay off when this terrible synopsis, you'd have to do a synopsis or a log line. It's just agonizing. It's almost harder than writing a whole chapter, and you probably nail it every time. Every
tagline on my books, Darkness Never Dies, 6 Dangerous Outcasts, One Impossible Heist, all except for King of Scars, which my friend Sarah Reese Brennan came up with a tagline for that. I came up with all of them. Like, so it is a skill. It is hard. Definitely come in handy. Yes.
Very hard. It is it's a different skill set from actually being an actual author. So it's all different skill sets. Boy, we have talked for a long time. I just want to get a couple of questions. I want to ask one, and then I'm going to ask you about something we talked about earlier. PRL wants to know, this is more of a comment. It was nice to see 6 of Crows as a duology. There are far too few of them. Now, there is this whole thing where you're like, you have to do a trilogy. And I have read probably every fantasy novel ever, and I've read thousands and thousands and thousands of pages. Why did you decide to do a duology? Thank you for that. And you did this new thing, King of Scars and The Roll of Wolves, as a duology too. How did you choose that format over like doing a trilogy like you did before?
First of all, I wanted to ask you if you read The Witchlands by Susan Dennard.
No, I'll get it today.
I just started it and it's just delightful. And I found out Jim Henson optioned it. Ooh. And now I'm just like, all I can do is picture all the incredibly weird and wonderful things they're going to do with this. It's just a great world. I think
I will 100% pick it up. I've been reading The Son of Storms by Suyi Davis Okunbowa, and it is
amazing.
It is an African inspired, like it's so interesting, the lore, and I love having to work at figuring out how a world works versus like, oh, it's dwarves and elves, and okay, let's shorthand it. I love it. It's so great. I will definitely check out that book, 100%.
So when I set out to write 6 of Crows, I didn't know if it was going to be 1 book or 2. I was like, I will not know until I've written it, because I had never written a book like this before. I hadn't written multiple POV. I'd never written a heist novel. I had no idea. And by the time I got to the end of that, I was like, I can tie up this plot line, no problem. But in terms of where the characters are emotionally, they are not done. They're very undercooked. Mm-hmm. So I knew I needed another book for that. And what I realized was, I actually think duologies slot into the 3-act structure so much better than trilogies.
Wow.
Because okay, so 3-act structure, I know you know this, but I'm going to just say it for anybody who doesn't. Yep. But like, in the first act is 25%, second act is 50%, and the third act is 25%. Nobody knows why they just call it the 3-act structure and not a 4-act structure.
Why is it not 4-act structure? Exactly. I study 5-act structure because that actually works for me better. That's a really good, that's one where a lot of TV people are using, especially for hour drama, because a lot of TV shows are 5 acts. And then if you do a 10 episode season, you could do 2 of each act. Anyway, I'll send you a really cool book you might like that does that.
I would like that because I have been working on the Ninth House pilot and I should probably know more things than I do.
Listen, you're probably going to write better than anybody who's actually in here.
But so in the middle of this second act is the midpoint turnaround, right? This is the big moment where everything changes for the world. The stakes get leveled up. And I love a strong midpoint turnaround. And I will give a book or a film or a TV series, like I will give you till the midpoint. And if you still haven't, like if you don't surprise me, I'm out. But, and I think, if you have a duology, that's the natural stopping point for that first book. Like that's where the cliffhanger is. That's your midpoint turnaround. And then, you start your second arc. So
you just blew my mind because every second book is always like, well, I got to get through this. I'm not kidding. I've never been like, thank God for the second book. No, it's always nobody's excited about it.
I can look at Siege and Storm. I love Siege and Storm because it has one of my favorite characters that I've written in it, Sturmhond. And there's a lot of fun stuff in it, but the middle of that book is mush. Like it is just nothing happens. Nothing happens. Lots of conversations, people angst. And I can look back and be like, wow, that is a squishy in the middle book. And I have to say, like, if I had written it as a duology, I don't think it would have the squish.
Because you wouldn't have to kind of fill it, because you have this mental thing of like, it needs to fit through between 2 covers. All right, let's fatten this butt up, like.
I didn't know what I was doing. It was the first sequel I'd written. Nobody tells you that the second book is so much harder to write than the first book. You think, oh, I've done it once,
No.
The sequel is always so much harder because you're not able to just throw open all of the doors.
Yeah.
You've created something and now you've written some checks that you now have to cash. And I remember literally cutting up pages from my printer and putting them all along the dining room wall, trying to get my head around this book because it was just beating me. Like it was like breaking me.
Well, it's also hard to have success because that puts so much more pressure on you. If like, I don't know when you started writing number 2, but if you started writing anywhere near after you hit the times list, the pressure to follow it up is so hard. It really is like, it's crushing.
Well, blessedly, and this is one of the gifts of being a debut author, there's a long lead between selling the book and publishing the book.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that.
Well, I didn't even know that. Like when I sold the book, I assumed, oh, we're going to publish this book in 3 months, maybe 6, And all my friends thought so too. They were like, what do you mean it's coming out a year from now? What's wrong with it? Like, do you have to fix it?
Like, so weird. It's so weird.
It's so weird. And so, I had time to write and the entirety of the first draft of the second book before the first draft.
Wow, that's so good though. Ugh.
Never again. I've never had that luxury again. So,
well, what also I love is that you can look at your own work and be like, wow, that was not the best I would do now. But that's because you did all the other books. You have such experience and you know that everything you do after that is going to be better, but also you're going to do something you're going to learn from and do better later. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I hope so. I want to get better. I want to be good at my job, Like, I don't want to go back to selling beer.
You won't. Listen, you will not. Well, anyway, we're out of time. I had so many guys. I'm sorry. I underestimated how interesting you would be to talk to.
A lot of people do.
Oh boy. I'm going to email you that book, but also you need to email me all your dermatology needs and foundations because I need it. And everyone go out and get The Rule of Wolves. And if you haven't read the first one, The King of Scars, you probably should do that. And then just check out all of Leigh's work because it really is top-notch fantasy. It's Ninth House. Do you have a sequel coming out? Should I ask that? Is that terrible?
I have every intention of writing a sequel, but I'm very behind on it. More behind than I've ever been on a book, but there's a lot happening right now.
I know. You're only about to debut a new world that could be like Game of Thrones into the world right now. I think you're okay.
I mean, a girl can hope.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. And everyone can follow you where? Where do you want them to follow you?
Follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm happiest. And I post. I don't really post on Twitter anymore unless it's just an announcement. So please come visit me on Instagram. It's L Bardugo, just the letter, not El Bardugo.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody. I will see you next week for 60. I don't remember what number this is. All right. Bye.